A man fatally shot his 8-year-old daughter before turning the gun on himself. This tragedy, which occurred July the 12th in Modesto, Central California, happened days after the shooter's wife filed for a restraining order and mere hours after the judge granted that restraining order. The scumbag shooter's name, Donovan Halstead, 50 years old. His wife's name, who thankfully wasn't at the scene at the time, her name, Kristen Halstead, and we're not told the name of the 8-year-old girl whose life was so horrifically taken away from her by her own father. So this article has given us more information about what occurred, and then it's going to go on to some details in regards to the father, the murderer's social media posts, which will give us somewhat of an insight into his mental health. Just a little bit of an insight, you know. I'm not going to pretend that this is some grand psychological expose. It's not, but it's going to give us a bit of an inkling about his mental health status. So we'll go through the details. So we are told again that this happened July 12th, 2023. Police received a call about a suicidal person at a home in Havenhurst Court, I believe in Modesto, Central California. Police arrived at the scene and they confronted the father as he waved a gun through the window of their home. So presumably the police were outside, perhaps they had their guns drawn, perhaps they were in defensive position, but they confronted, I guess verbally, the father, and the father said, okay, I'm going to come out, I give up, I'm going to come out and I'll come out unarmed. That's what the suicidal father said, but he was lying. A few minutes later, police heard gunshots from inside the home. They rushed inside, or they went inside. They found the scumbag shooter, Donovan Halstead, still alive, but suffering from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He was taken to hospital. He died a few days later. Oh no, what a shame. More importantly, more tragically, police found the 8-year-old girl, his daughter, also suffering from a gunshot wound. Deputies attempted life-saving measures, but tragically, the 8-year-old girl, again, we're not told her name, died on the scene. Of course, first and foremost, full condolences to the 8-year-old girl's family and also friends. We're not told if there are any siblings, but we are told that her mother, Kristen Halstead, wasn't at the home at the time of the incident, at the time of this tragedy. That's a blessing, but it's perhaps a bitter blessing because she has had her life turned upside down, ripped apart. Her angel, her 8-year-old girl, has been killed. The mother believed she was doing the right thing by obtaining a restraining order. She had previously attempted to obtain a restraining order back in 2016. The attempt to gain the 2016 restraining order was cancelled or abandoned for whatever reason. But at this point, in July, the mother, Kristen Halstead, had sought a restraining order against her husband, Donovan Halstead, who has been accused by the wife, by the mother of the 8-year-old that's been killed. The husband has been accused of being both verbally and physically abusive towards the mother, Kristen Halstead, throughout their relationship. So she seemingly identified correctly that her husband was a danger, not only to himself, but more importantly, to her and her daughter, and perhaps other children. We're not told if other children are involved. So she did the right thing, didn't she? Isn't this what we want? We want, I'll say women, but really, you know, partners that are in a toxic, dangerous relationship. If they have an understanding or perhaps even an inkling that their partner is a danger to themselves or children in the home, we encourage them to take action. And legal action's a pretty good form of action to take generally. That's what I've always thought, and perhaps I've been somewhat wrong because I'm learning that this is somewhat fairly common, that when a partner does seek out a restraining order, that can be, I'll use the word provocation, may not be the correct word, but that can somehow act as a provocation for the violent party to take severe action. So it's a real shame. I really do feel very bad for the mother, Kristen Halstead. We're told that there is a GoFundMe out there. I think it's raised, give or take, $25,000. Perhaps it's a little under its goal, or perhaps it's just surpassed it. I'm not entirely sure. But it's kind of by the by, her life, the mother's life, has been ripped apart. So I feel very badly for her. So the article tells us a little bit about the social media postings of the father, I believe on Facebook and other platforms too. And he's made a number of emotional social media posts of various kinds, some professing his love for his wife, for his now dead daughter, in a very wordy, flowery way, you know, just a little bit too much, inauthentic. He also talks about his says struggle with depression. He says that he struggled with clinical depression most of his life, that he has memories of being a boy and feeling like something was wrong, a dark and looming feeling, ever present regardless of the actual situation. So he uses the term clinically depressed in regards to himself. We're not told if he has literally been diagnosed as such or merely self-diagnosed. I'm in two minds on this subject. Part of me is thinking, well, this doesn't sound very good, does it? He's saying that he's been depressed much of his life. He's had a dark and looming feeling ever present. Well, that's not very nice. One would hope that he would have had access to some support, mental health support, the ability to go to a therapist, a psychiatrist, to be medicated if needs be, if indeed he was medically diagnosed with having clinical depression or anything of the sort. One would have thought and hoped that he would have had access to such facilities. He had money to raise a daughter. Am I allowed to mention that? We don't know too much about your financial situation, but you were raising a daughter. Couldn't you find a few $100s to go and see a therapist? Am I being a little bit silly here? We don't know whether or not he did that. But I said that I'm in two minds. So part of me feels, okay, well, look, depression, mental health issues are clearly a major problem, and we need to have access to treatments of some kind or other. So there's that. But also I'm reading through this and I'm just thinking, how much of this is histrionics? How much of this has been overly dramatic? Couldn't a lot of us say, oh, we felt depressed since a young age? Couldn't a lot of us say that? I could see that I could say that. I could reflect on my life in that kind of way. I could paint that picture. Should I want to? Should I allow myself to indulge in such a description? I could come up with an argument for myself, and I can well imagine others are able to do the same, many others. But at the same time, I've always had, or generally had, a pretty buoyant mindset, you know. I'm pretty resilient. I try to look for fun and light in life, mostly. What's my point? My point is, I think that to an extent, I kind of feel, you know what, just get on with it, mate. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get on with it, you know? And maybe that's silly or, I don't know, politically incorrect of me, I'm not sure. But it does seem to me that the father was confident enough to make public social media posts, presumably to his family and friends. I don't know if he had an audience, a following or such, but he was making public declarations of his own self-diagnosed depression. He either legitimately or otherwise believed that he was mentally ill in some capacity or other, mentally unwell. So why didn't he seek help? Why didn't he seek help? Why didn't he distance himself willingly from his family if he felt that he could potentially be a danger to himself or them? Again, perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps he did seek help. We're not told about that, but I'm guessing, and my guess is that he didn't seek help. He wasn't provided with adequate help. And why is that? I think there's a good chance that he didn't go out and get it. So I'm going to wrap things up at this point. I've gone on a bit of a ramble fest, haven't been totally coherent in this video. If you've listened to the end, and I think only a couple of you will, then you're an absolute star. I appreciate that. But I'll wrap things up at this point so I can move on to some other videos. Again, full condolences, particularly to the mother of the 8-year-old girl, any other family and friends, the officers that are working on the case. It's absolutely terrible. The father, the husband, his life is gone, and I'm going to say that's a blessing.